seeing as the theme of this video is going to be talking about hardcore, I figured we'd keep the theme of the straight edge and not really do any like cigars or beer, so I decided to just get some Diet Mountain Dew and drink some of this while I talk about whatever it is I'm going to talk about during this video. Never had Diet Mountain Dew, also I'm not sponsored by them. I was just curious what it tasted like, and that's why I bought it. So I've had worse. What I want to talk about during this video is a music genre that has recently been growing and people have been getting into lately. And as you can see, I've also got my Throne shirt on, and they will be mentioned in this video here and there. And I want to kind of talk about some of my favorite hardcore bands, what got me into hardcore, and why you should listen to it, along with what makes it so awesome. Let's start with when I was introduced to hardcore. Monkey see, monkey do. So who the fuck made you? So who the fuck made you? It feels like 1,000 years since I fell in love. I can't really pinpoint the exact time frame that I was first introduced to this genre. You know, the first band that I listened to in this genre was a band called Knocked Loose, and it was a song I heard off of their Different Shade of Blue album. The song was Mistakes Like Fractures, and you know, I was at that time I was like starting to get into more heavier music, and it just kind of came up on my Spotify feed at some point, and I just kind of clicked it to check them out. And you know, I vibed with the guitar riff at the beginning, but something I just could not for the life of me at that time was Brian Garris's vocals. I was just like, man, this dude just straight up sounds like SpongeBob. He just sounds like a Mickey Mouse like SpongeBob mix, and I just couldn't understand the whole like appeal of it, and I just it turned me off from hardcore as a whole, because that's kind of what I assumed hardcore to be, was other types of Knocked Loose. And in reality, that wasn't true, as future me would come to find out. I just kind of stopped like discovering that portion of music in general, just because I couldn't get behind the vocals whatsoever. It wasn't until my first semester senior year in college, I went to a Invent Animate show, their headliner in Chicago. It was like somewhere October, November, and there was a hardcore band that was opening for them called Throne. And me personally, I like going into mosh pits. So my idea of a mosh pit at that time was you just kind of go in there and you push people and you kind of just bang your head a little bit, let out some of the aggression. When Throne came on, they opened with the song Guilt, and people started like throwing hands, side kicks, roundhouses. They were like two-stepping while punching their hands in the air, like started windmilling and stuff. And I was like, what kind of mosh pit is this? This isn't like a normal mosh pit. I was scared and freaked out. And on the ride back home, I asked my friend, who was our lead singer of the band at that time that I was in. If I didn't mention before, I went to this Invent headliner with my college band I was in. And our lead singer told me, oh, that was a hardcore pit. that's like what hardcore pits are like. He's like, you can do that type of stuff. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, dude, no, that's totally normal. Like, no one in there was like inherently trying to be a mean person. It's just the nature of a hardcore pit. And I was like, huh. I didn't really think too much of it. I was just kind of like, okay, sure, man, whatever. That kind of like, that idea of that aggressiveness in the mosh pit kind of turned me off a little bit more from the hardcore scene in general. It wasn't that I wasn't open to it. It was just, I was slightly confused by how aggressive the nature of the music was and how dissonant the nature of the music was. That's kind of like my rough introduction to the hardcore scene, was a different shade of blue and Throne opening up for Invent Animate. What's interesting is the same band that turned me off from hardcore was the very thing that also just started the rabbit hole of me like getting really into the hardcore scene and like loving the hardcore pits and the community. It just basically becoming full on like kind of straight edge, yeah, this is what I do now type kid. I think the moment that got me into that rabbit hole was I was picking up my lead singer from his dorm to go to band rehearsal, and I told him I found this band Knocked Loose like a couple years back, and I just couldn't get behind the dude's vocals because it was so SpongeBob-like and it was so squeaky. Just like in my head, a metal vocals should have been deep, gritty, angry, loud, and for me, Brian Garris wasn't cutting it at the time, and he was like, no, dude, you just don't fully understand where those emotions are coming from and how raw his vocals are. He was like, you need to listen to their EP, Tearing the Fabric of Life. And I was like, what's that? And he put the title track for Tearing the Fabric of Life, which was Where Light Divides the Holler. And like for 53 seconds, it's like this intro, like kind of ambient intro that starts with like a car driving, radio turning on, and then the car crashes, the riff kicks in, and Brian Garris screams, and it's like one of the most evil, horrific, just terrible, awesome, and scary things I've heard in my life. And it just made me do the face. It was also one of the heaviest things I've heard, and it genuinely made me go, holy. And that was like the beginning of my hardcore rabbit hole. And listening to that full EP gave me a whole new understanding of hardcore because of how raw and how real the emotions was, and Brian Garris's vocals just being so genuinely mad and angry, and understanding how his vocals fits that music so well. And I want to talk about that EP, Tearing the Fabric of Life, and kind of like what it's about and my feelings towards it, because that EP is genuinely what like got me into the hardcore scene. This EP comes with an animation on YouTube. What the story follows of the EP is you follow this story of a guy who loses his girlfriend in a car accident, and you kind of follow his story of the spiral as it goes, and his like mental spiral as the tracks keep going, each song becoming more chaotic and more anxiety driven and more like a trapped feeling is the gist of the EP. So we'll start with the first song, Where Light Divides the Holler. This is the beginning opening track of the EP, and essentially it sets up the story of how the tragedy occurred and the emotions that go through a person's brain when such a tragedy occurs. Coming from a musician standpoint, I'll kind of explain also how like the sounds of the guitar and the drums are supposed to like come together as one to create this feeling of, oh, I'm trapped, oh, I'm anxious. With that title track, the car crash happens, and that beginning riff, the kind of like and then the like kind of dissonant like going on with it. In my head, what the musicians were trying to do with that opening track was create a sense of panic of what just happened to the persons, what just happened to the persons that were involved in that tragedy and that accident. And the kind of like the dissonant like was supposed to emulate a car alarm, in my opinion. I think I might be reading too into it. That's how I took it, and it kind of creates this atmosphere of like what you need to attach the main riff of. That main riff of anxiety, and how you need to attach that to the car alarm sound with the dissonance happening as a way of like sending a message to the listener like, hey, the situation's bad, car crash heavily is affecting people that was in this tragedy, and also the anxiety is building up through the song before the breakdown hits. And it's supposed to give this feeling like I'm trapped. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do to help whoever just died in this tragedy. I'm kind of screwed. This is going to be my fault if I can't do something. When the breakdown hits, Brian Garris just vocalizes a tear in the fabric of life. And the breakdown hits, and I kind of take that as like the main character of the story of that EP accepting that, oh no, my girlfriend's dead and it's my fault. Because this kind of, in the animation as well, if you watch the animation, this kind of demonic figure appears behind him when that happens, when the breakdown of that song kicks in. The light kind of fades with the character as that breakdown fits in, and that kind of demon in the background starts to consume him, which I take it as, oh, this happened. Oh, the guilt's starting to set in. Oh no, I don't know what I'm gonna do from this point on. Then the song ends, and it goes into the next song, God Knows. In my opinion, that song represents the beginning of the end for our character. Because right from the get-go, the song is more chaotic, more aggressive, and just overall more, this makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like this. This is not good. This makes me, Essentially what the song is about, the synopsis of it is, it's the character's start of a spiral. And I think the exact moment of that song, of when the spiral begins, is the lines right before the breakdown and the actual breakdown itself. So what I'm talking about is Brian Garris screams, panic sets in, and I start to shake. Loathing, and then that kind of, the breakdown starts to kick in, and then he says, crushed from the weight of the terror. And the breakdown fully kicks in, and you can feel almost that trapped sense feeling like, oh no, what have I done? Makes you want to like curl up into a ball and kind of protect yourself, and you're like, oh, this guy is starting to spiral. I don't like the way this is making me feel, and you can really sense the despair listening to the breakdown. And even in the animation, I'm pretty sure this is when the animator at the end of the song literally draws like a spiral, which literally represents, oh yeah, the character's starting to spiral now, by the way, if you didn't notice. And that's kind of why I see God Knows as the beginning of the end. The next song is Forced to Stay, which is essentially the character is trying to come to terms with so many mosquitoes. Trying to come to terms with what he's done, but is just failing to do so, and he just ends up feeling more guilt. And there's like a part toward the end breakdown of that animation where Brian Garris is saying like the rain washes you away. The characters in the animation were like grabbing their eyes and like kind of holding it out to the character as the main character kind of floats upon a chair. And I saw that as everybody's on like offering their condolences to this character and their support, but they don't fully see what he's going through. They don't fully see how he feels and how he's trying to cope and deal with it, and nobody like fully understands the way this guy feels. And it's just making him spiral even more because he feels like there's nobody that he can relate to, and it's just messing with his head. Contorted in the Fail is the next song, and essentially what this song's about, I think, is him like coming up with a drastic solution to his problem, and he's trying to think like, how can I be with her again? What is the solution I need to do here to kind of have her with me here again? Because I am going absolutely insane without her. And I see Contorted in the Fail as the prelude to the next song, Return to Passion, because Contorted in the Fail is like almost like him, like two sides of his brain conflicting with himself, with making a really horrible decision to be with her again, and the other part of his brain, the logical part, which is like there's nothing you can really do, the tragedy already occurred, and dwelling on it is just going to make you spiral even more. It's like two sides of his brain are fighting. That prelude leads into like the next song, Return to Passion, which at this point of the EP, the instruments are just full chaos, zero scales, full dissonant noise, pitch shifting, harmonizers, just the character fully losing it. And essentially the song is the main character literally digs up the corpse of his dead partner and ends up doing things that I don't really want to speak about in this video, and hiding her body parts in places of the house. And the animation just shows like the character has literally fully lost it, and just fully spiraling, fully giving into the insanity of the situation, not really caring about what's logical anymore, just fully losing it. And then we go to the last track of the EP, Permanent, and right from the get-go when you hear the intro, you're like, oh, this is the end, like it's over. Permanent is quite literally like what the title track of the song is about. He made a permanent, drastic solution to his ongoing problem. I'm gonna have so many bites after this, man, it's so annoying. At this point, I accept it. Permanent is quite literally him just coming to terms with what he thinks he needs to do to stop feeling this tremendous guilt that he feels, which is taking his own life. We see that in the video of the EP. Like the part right before the breakdown, the lyrics quite literally read, closure in a physical form. Reject the hand of the devout. When I saw the ghost was you, all the lights went out. Permanent blue. And he turns into a skeleton and he embraces with another skeleton. And the viewer just assumes that, oh, that's what he did. And, you know, that EP is dark. That EP is dark, and it cuts deep because there is a lot of strong emotions that are talked about in the lyricism of that video along with the animation of it. And I think the artistic nature of it and just looking kind of deeper into it and kind of trying to see like why everything is the way it is what kind of really got me interested in hardcore and made me want to further like kind of pursue the scene. And the thing that really just kind of sealed the deal was the first time I saw a Knocked Loose headliner in Chicago. I bought a mouthpiece and I went into the pit, and I had probably the best time of my life. They opened up with a Blinding Faith. Oh my god, it just insanity occurred almost instantly. I was so starstruck, and I connected with the community in there so well, and it was just a great time. And the closing song, Everything is Quiet Now, giant wall of death. I'll even put like a clip in this YouTube video here just so you guys get an idea of the insanity. Brian Garrett just screams, "Everything is quiet now!" Lights go out, both sides run at each other. One of the coolest experiences ever. Yeah, that kind of shot put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, or shot me in the foot, some saying, and deeply got me invested into hardcore. In fact, so much so that I went and saw Knocked Loose again in Orlando when they headlined for their You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to tour, and I just fell in love with hardcore even more. Because of that, I ended up going to Counterparts live. I ended up going to Throne live. I saw Contentions live. They're a local Florida band. But yeah, that's kind of my story of how I got into hardcore. Kind of why I love it so much was that EP, A Tear in the Fabric of Life. Now, last thing I want to talk about is why you should listen to hardcore. Bless us with lust, blood, no sacred skin remains above awaiting grace. Let me preface this by saying that hardcore as a genre is not necessarily easy to digest, so to speak, but it's simple and it's effective for the most part. Like bands like Kublai Khan, I mean, some people say they're not hardcore, but I say they're hardcore in nature. Especially like their Exhibition of Prowess album is just so simple, aggressive, and effective. You can kind of just bob your head to it. And why I think you should give hardcore a shot is because even if it's not your style of music, it's the community of hardcore is so accepting, and the music that hardcore deals with real issues in life. Like a lot of the lyrics are about like real life topics that are going on and that need to be discussed, like grief, loss, overcoming loss, and kind of how to deal with those extreme emotions. And hardcore does such a good job of expressing anger in such a good, aggressive, and simple way that people can kind of connect with because of its simplicity. Now you got like bands like Counterparts where it kind of gets a little bit more complicated, but even then, it's just things you can kind of like connect with and kind of feel the rawness of it. And that's why I think you should listen to hardcore. Is the rawness of it, the realness of hardcore is really the kicker that I think I want people to take out of this and kind of give hardcore a shot. One song that I feel like, I might be incorrect here, but that gets overlooked by Knocked Loose a lot is on their most recent album, on You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to, is Sit and Mourn. It's so different from their entire catalog, and essentially it just talks about the strong feelings of grief and what people kind of go through when they are grieving, that I don't think a lot of modern art. I could be biased here, but I don't think a lot of modern art or kind of like modern radio music does that good of a job of like both being melodic, angry, and kind of describing those extreme emotions of grief. And that song just does a fantastic job. I'm gonna leave kind of a list here somewhere in the video of like hardcore bands to check out that I think are a good kind of intro to the scene. It's kind of my spiel on why I like hardcore. I'm gonna get out of here now before these mosquitoes end up chewing me out.